I'm Chris, 40M. If you asked anyone in my family to describe me, they'd probably say I'm the serious one or the uptight one. What they don't say, but what I know to be true, is that I'm the one who doesn't fold under pressure. I've had to work for everything I own, from the roof over my head to the car in my driveway. And when you've spent years clawing your way toward stability, you learn to protect what you have. That trait has never sat well with my sister, Lena, 36F. She's the type who thinks other people's effort is just available. She doesn't ask with humility, she assumes. If you tell her no, you're suddenly stingy or cruel. Growing up, I can't even count how many times she raided my things, CDs, clothes, even my bike when we were kids. She'd leave them dented, scratched, or broken, then shrug with that insincere half-smile and say, "Well, it's not that bad." And Mom would always step in, smoothing it over, telling me to be more understanding, more flexible, more forgiving. That dynamic never changed. It just evolved into adult-sized problems. I live a pretty quiet life now, about 20 minutes outside the city. I keep to myself, keep my home clean, and I don't invite drama. My relationship with my family is cordial at best, strained at worst. We see each other enough to maintain appearances, but I've learned to keep my world guarded. I don't talk about my finances, I don't share details about my work, and I certainly don't hand out favors like candy. But Lena, she doesn't respect boundaries. She still shows up at my place unannounced, usually under some thin excuse. Sometimes it's just visiting. Sometimes it's because she needs to borrow something small, but it always ends with her trying to push her way past my limits. The last time she came over, she lingered in my driveway a little too long, eyeing my car. Well, one of my cars. I have a newer sedan I use during the week for commuting. But parked beside it is my pride and joy, an older SUV that I bought years ago and restored bit by bit. It's nothing exotic, but it's in excellent condition, clean, reliable, and more importantly, mine. I drive it on weekends or when I take longer trips. Every bolt, every polish, every upgrade has a story attached to it. It's not just transportation, it's the product of patience and hard work. That day, Lena leaned against the hood, tapping it lightly with her hand as if it already belonged to her. "You know," she started, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. "This would really solve a lot of problems for me right now." I knew where this was headed, but I let her finish. "My car's basically done for," she went on, sighing dramatically. "And I just need something to get around while I figure things out. You've got two, Chris. You don't need both. It's just sitting here most of the time. You could help me out and let me use this one for a bit." I felt that familiar weight settle in my chest, the same one I always felt when she tried to twist logic into entitlement. "No," I said plainly. "I'm not lending out my car." She blinked at me, taken aback that I didn't hesitate. "What? Why not? You barely use it. I'll take care of it. You know I will." I gave a short, humorless laugh. "Lena, you don't even take care of your own things. Your car didn't just break down. You've ignored maintenance for years. I'm not handing you mine so you can run it into the ground." Her face tightened, the fake sweetness starting to crack. "Wow, selfish much? I said I'd take care of it. You don't trust me? It's not like I'd wreck it." "I'm not lending it," I repeated, keeping my tone even. The silence between us stretched, her jaw tightening as she searched for an angle. Finally, she muttered, "You've changed. You used to be kinder." I didn't rise to it. I just unlocked the door and told her I had things to do. She stormed off, heels clacking against the driveway, muttering under her breath. I thought that was the end of it. But later that evening, Mom called. She didn't even bother with small talk. She launched right in. "Chris, I heard you wouldn't let your sister use your car. Why are you being so difficult about this? She's going through a tough time. You have two vehicles, she has none. Do you see how that looks?" I clenched my jaw, listening to the same old script I'd heard since childhood. "It looks like Lena wants to take something that isn't hers." "I'm not doing it, Mom." "You're overreacting," she said quickly, as though dismissing a child's tantrum. "It's just a car. You act like it's made of gold." "It's mine," I said firmly. "That's all that matters. This conversation is over." I ended the call before she could scold me further. For the rest of the evening, I kept thinking about the way Lena had lingered by the SUV, the way she touched it like she already owned it. I should have known no wasn't going to be the end of it. 2 mornings later, I stepped out into the driveway with my coffee in hand, expecting nothing more than a routine start to my day. Instead, I froze halfway down the front steps. My SUV was not where I had left it. The empty strip of concrete sat in front of me like a missing tooth, glaring and undeniable. For a moment, I thought maybe I had parked it at the curb or left it somewhere else, but I'm meticulous about my routines. That car always sits in the same place, angled slightly toward the maple tree on the right side of the driveway. My sedan was still there. The SUV wasn't. I set my mug down on the step and scanned the street. Nothing. No sign of it. That sinking weight in my stomach turned cold. The first name that flashed through my mind wasn't a thief or a stranger. It was Lena. I wanted to believe I was overthinking, that there had to be some other explanation, but the gut feeling gnawed at me. She had asked, I had refused, and now the vehicle was gone. I walked back inside and checked my keys. Sure enough, my spare set was missing. The little hook where both sets normally hung had only one keychain dangling. The picture came together in an instant. Lena had been in my house countless times. She knew where I kept things. And as much as it made my hands clench into fists, I realized she had probably pocketed the spare during one of her visits. I sat down at the table, my mind racing. I wanted to call her immediately, but something inside told me to pause. I've learned that when it comes to Lena, confronting her too quickly only gives her room to twist the story. I needed proof first. Hours dragged by until the sound of tires crunching on the driveway jolted me from my chair. I peeked through the blinds. And there it was, my SUV, pulling in as though it had just taken itself for a joyride. Lena stepped out like she had returned from a shopping trip. A plastic bag dangled from her arm. She adjusted her sunglasses and hummed, strolling casually toward my door. I opened it before she could knock. "Where's the fire?" she said with a laugh, brushing past me like she belonged there. "Lena," I said slowly, "why is my car not where I left it this morning?" Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then she waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, that. I thought you said it was fine. You weren't using it. I just needed to run a few errands." "You thought I said it was fine?" My voice was even, but my heart was hammering. She shifted uncomfortably, then dropped her tone to a whisper, as if lowering her voice would soften the trespass. "Chris, don't make a big deal out of this. I didn't mean to upset you." But she had that look in her eyes, the one I'd seen since childhood, the look that said she wasn't sorry at all. She was only sorry I had caught her. I stepped aside and let her carry her bag into the kitchen. She placed it on the counter and began pulling out small things, snacks, cosmetics, nothing worth the risk she had taken. "You stole my keys," I said plainly. Her shoulders stiffened. "Borrowed. I borrowed them. Honestly, Chris, you're so dramatic. I brought the car back in perfect condition, didn't I?" Perfect condition. The words nearly made me laugh, except there was no humor in it. I had restored that SUV myself, down to the smallest detail, and she had just taken it without permission like it was a library book. "You do not take someone's vehicle without asking," I said, keeping my voice steady. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. It's not like I totaled it. You need to loosen up. You're acting like I committed a crime." I stared at her, letting the silence grow heavy. In that moment, I realized she truly didn't think she had done anything wrong. In her mind, my refusal days ago hadn't been a boundary, it had been a challenge. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the table. Mom's name lit up the screen. I had a sinking feeling I already knew why she was calling. I answered. "Chris." Mom's voice came through brisk and pointed. "Lena just told me you're upset about the car. Honestly, I don't understand why. She needed it for a few hours. You weren't using it. Why are you making this into an issue?" I gripped the phone tighter. "Mom, she stole my keys and took my car without permission. That's not something you brush off. It's family," Mom replied, as if that single word erased everything. "You need to stop being so rigid. Your sister is struggling. Can't you show a little compassion?" The word compassion tasted bitter in my mouth. Compassion doesn't mean letting someone cross every line I set. "She's your sister," Mom repeated firmly. "It's not a big deal." I didn't argue further. I knew from experience it was useless. Mom wasn't going to side with me. She never did. I hung up without saying goodbye. Lena stood there smirking, arms folded, clearly aware of the conversation. "See? Even Mom thinks you're overreacting." I didn't respond. I knew better than to waste more words. That evening, after she left, I walked outside with my phone. I circled the SUV slowly, documenting everything. The mileage, the condition of the tires, the faint new scuff near the bumper I hadn't noticed before. I opened the glove compartment, the back seat, the trunk, snapping photo after photo. When I stepped back into the house, I sat at my desk, pulled up my email, and started typing. I knew exactly who to send the photos to. And by 7:02 a.m. the next morning, Lena would be staring at something she couldn't simply laugh off. The next morning, I woke early, earlier than I normally would, with a quiet satisfaction that comes from meticulous planning. I brewed my coffee and walked over to the SUV, parked exactly where it belonged. But this time, it wasn't just about seeing it. It was about watching the fallout of the little work I had done the night before. I hadn't touched anything physically on the car, but the emails I sent late last night were crafted carefully. One went to the local insurance office, detailing a report of unauthorized use of a vehicle, complete with timestamps and photos. Another went to a local legal advisory, framing the situation as an ongoing dispute over property and potential misuse. I also sent a carefully worded email to my extended family group chat, subtly letting them know that my SUV had been used without permission and that the situation was being documented. It wasn't direct, and I didn't name Lena outright, but the implication was clear. I watched from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, as Lena emerged from her apartment across the street. She stretched, yawned, and casually waved at a neighbor. Then she looked down at her phone and froze. Her expression changed so quickly that I almost laughed. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, and finally, her mouth pressed into a thin line. She had opened one of the emails I had CC'd to the family group chat, and the ripple effect hit immediately. Within minutes, her phone buzzed nonstop. First, a message from Mom. "Lena, what did you do?" Then, from my cousin Elise. "Are you serious?" Then another from her friend Marcy. "Did you even think about what could happen?" She dropped the phone onto the hood of her own car and stared at it like it was suddenly alien, like it had betrayed her. I could see her panic in real time, her usual composure crumbling. Lena, who had walked into my driveway like she owned the place just days ago, now looked like a deer caught in headlights. I didn't say a word. I made my morning coffee, took a few deliberate sips, and leaned against the counter, watching. I could see her pacing, muttering to herself, her phone clutched like a lifeline. And then Mom called. "Chris," Mom said, her tone clipped, sharp, almost accusatory. "What exactly did you do?" "I documented everything," I replied evenly. "The car was taken without permission, and I made sure the proper channels are aware. That's all." "This is ridiculous," she snapped, though there was an edge of fear in her voice that she didn't intend to show. "It's just a car. You're making a huge problem out of nothing. Your sister didn't harm it. You're overreacting." "I'm not overreacting," I said. "I'm holding people accountable for their actions. That's the difference." "You're going to ruin everything," she hissed. "I'm going to make sure the rules are followed," I replied calmly. And the rules were very clear. I hung up without another word. By the time Lena finally came over later that morning, she was pale, flustered, and defensive. She didn't even knock. She barged in, and the moment she stepped inside, her eyes darted around, looking for evidence of what I might have done. "What did you send?" she demanded, her voice tight, low, angry. "I sent emails documenting your actions," I said, deliberately slow. "To insurance, to legal advisors, to family. I included photos. All of it is time-stamped and verifiable." You can't do that," she stammered, voice shaking. "That's insane. That's illegal," I offered, letting the silence stretch. "No, I'm documenting something that already happened. You took my property without permission. I'm not the one breaking the law." Her face twisted, a mix of fear and fury, the look of someone finally realizing they had overstepped in a way they couldn't undo. And Mom called again within 10 minutes, this time almost pleading. "Chris, can we talk? Just delete it all." Lena didn't know what she was doing. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Please just." "I don't delete documented evidence," I said, my tone soft but firm. "I keep records of actions for accountability. That's all. That's how responsibility works." She went silent for a long moment, then sighed heavily, a sound of someone losing control over a situation they always expected to bend in their favor. Meanwhile, Lena's phone continued buzzing. I watched as her hands trembled while she tried to answer messages from every direction. Friends, co-workers, family members, all questioning what she had done. There was no sympathy, no quick fix. The carefully constructed illusion that she could do whatever she wanted without consequence had crumbled, and it was visible in every movement she made. Then she looked at me, her eyes narrowing, and whispered, "This isn't over. You're going to regret this." I smiled quietly to myself. I wasn't scared. I had been preparing for this for years. She had spent her life manipulating, taking advantage, and relying on Mom to cover for her. That safety net had been shredded, thread by thread, in less than 24 hours. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. She barely touched anything, avoided making eye contact, and kept pacing from the kitchen to the living room. Every so often, she would glance at her phone, hoping, wishing, for a message that would undo the embarrassment and the exposure, but none came. By evening, I noticed something subtle but satisfying. My emails had set off a ripple far beyond what I had anticipated. A few cousins sent Lena private messages, hinting that her behavior was unacceptable. Friends were questioning her judgment. And even Mom had a quiet, almost reluctant tone when she spoke to her later that night. For the first time in decades, Lena was cornered. She had assumed that taking what wasn't hers would go unnoticed, that her charm and Mom's indulgence would shield her from consequences. But reality had caught up. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The tension, the fear, the realization that she had overstepped beyond repair. Those things were far more satisfying than any words I could have spoken. And yet, I knew this was just the beginning. Because when you've spent years building a reputation of entitlement and deceit, the blowback is always louder. Lena was cornered, but she was also dangerous. And Mom had a way of spinning situations, trying to manipulate sympathy for her poor child whenever convenient. I sat back in my chair that night, sipping my coffee slowly, letting it all sink in. The emails were out, the documentation was done, the ripple effect had begun. But the real test would come tomorrow, when Lena tried to navigate the fallout of her own actions and realized that she couldn't charm, coerce, or manipulate her way out this time. And when she finally did figure that out, I had a few more moves left, carefully planned and executed in advance. Moves that would ensure she couldn't simply walk back into the safety of her usual privileges. Moves that would make sure that for once, Lena learned what it felt like to face consequences she couldn't argue or whine her way out of. I went to bed that night with a sense of calm. I knew that by the time she woke up, everything would have changed for her. The smug confidence she carried like armor would be gone. She would be forced to reckon with something she had never faced before: accountability. And the best part? She wouldn't even know it was me. At least, not yet. The morning after I sent the emails, Lena woke to a storm she couldn't control. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Messages from family members she had taken for granted, from friends who were suddenly questioning her judgment, and from Mom, whose voice over text had lost all its warmth. I watched from my window as she slumped onto the curb across the street, phone in hand, her usual poise completely gone. Every glance she cast at my house betrayed fear, frustration, and disbelief. She had spent her life assuming consequences were for other people, not for her. Now she was seeing the stark reality of accountability for the first time. By mid-morning, the emails had done their work. A couple of cousins sent direct messages demanding explanations. Friends were sending links to insurance advice and tips for vehicle responsibility, all politely implying that Lena had acted recklessly. She tried calling Mom, her voice sharp with panic. "Mom, you have to say something," Lena pleaded. Mom's response was measured but firm, a shift from her usual indulgence. "Lena, this is on you. Chris documented everything. I can't fix it for you." The words hit her like a hammer. Lena's entire world had been built on the assumption that someone, Mom, a friend, anyone, would always bail her out. That illusion was gone. Around noon, I went outside and called her over. She approached cautiously, like a cat stepping around a corner it had misjudged. "Chris, you can't do this," she said, voice shaking. "Delete it. Just delete it, and it's over." I shook my head. "I don't delete accountability. That's not how responsibility works. You took my car without permission. You thought you could get away with it. Now you're learning that actions have consequences." Her eyes darted nervously toward the SUV. I had made sure everything was exactly where it should be, pristine, but the emails and documentation had already made their mark. It wasn't just about the car. It was the principle, the exposure, the undeniable evidence that she had overstepped. By early afternoon, Lena had tried to rally allies. She called a few friends, attempting to spin the story. But the emails, the photographs, and the documentation had already seeded doubt in everyone she reached out to. People didn't believe her. People were questioning her character. The entitled confidence she always relied on was gone, replaced with frantic scrambling and humiliation. Mom, ever the enabler, had tried to intervene one last time. She came over under the guise of mediating between us, but the desperation in her tone betrayed her. "Chris, please, just forgive her," Mom said. "It was a misunderstanding. Can't you just let it go?" I looked at her calmly. "Mom, I'm not forgiving her because this isn't about forgiveness. It's about accountability. You've spent decades protecting her from consequences. That ends here. No more cover-ups, no more excuses." She faltered, the weight of my words sinking in. Even Mom, who had spent years shielding Lena from reality, realized she couldn't spin this one away. By late afternoon, Lena had retreated to her apartment, her phone quiet, but her inbox flooded with reminders of what she had done. Friends and family, previously loyal to her narrative, were now questioning everything: her judgment, her honesty, and her entitlement. The illusion of control she had relied on since childhood was shattered. I went inside, poured a glass of water, and looked around my house. Everything was calm. The SUV was untouched. My rules had held. My boundaries had been enforced. And, most importantly, the people who had repeatedly undermined me, Lena and Mom, had finally faced the consequences of their behavior. For once, Lena couldn't charm, manipulate, or guilt anyone into rescuing her. She had crossed a line, and the world around her had responded accordingly. Mom, too, had been forced to witness that indulgence and favoritism had limits. Weeks passed, and the change in dynamics was unmistakable. Lena no longer assumed she could borrow or take what she wanted. She became quieter, more cautious, aware that every action had a tangible impact. Mom, on her part, stopped intervening automatically, realizing that constant cover-ups had only enabled chaos. Neither of them tried to argue the situation anymore. And me? I had finally restored order in my life. My home, my possessions, and my peace of mind remained untouched. I had enforced boundaries without shouting, without drama, simply through careful planning, documentation, and letting the truth speak for itself. In the end, the situation was clear. Lena had learned what it meant to face real accountability. Mom had learned that enabling and dismissing boundaries came at a cost. And I had reinforced that no matter how entitled someone thinks they are, there are always consequences for ignoring rules and crossing lines. The house was calm again. The SUV sat where it belonged. And for the first time in decades, I felt the satisfaction of finally being taken seriously, not as the overreacting sibling, but as someone who would not allow manipulation, entitlement, or carelessness to dominate his life. The lesson had been delivered, meticulously and irrevocably. Lena's entitlement had been exposed, Mom's favoritism challenged, and the family dynamic forever shifted. And it had been done quietly, deliberately, and without forgiveness, because some actions don't deserve it. Some boundaries are meant to be enforced, and some people need to see the real weight of their own recklessness before they ever change. In this case, Lena and Mom had learned the hard way that there are limits, and I made sure they couldn't forget it. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.